ক্লাছত কোন কোন absent আছিলে dropper batch online আৰু নাই I know কিয় তুমি তো অনলাইন আছিলা নি কিয় why did not feel like পঢ়া সময়ত কিহৰ প্ৰবলেম কোনটো আৰু বাকি তোমালোকৰ প্ৰবলেমে আছিল চাগে মিটিং হে ৰাতিখন 4টা বজাৰ পৰা 6টা লৈকে
মানে ইয়াৰ পিছত মানে গৈছিল কিন্তু তাতে টাইম বহুত লেট হ'ল
Okay, anyway, okay, let's start that topic. We were talking about ascent of sap in the last class, and what we have discussed is talking about the process of ascent of sap. Various scientists from time to time has been talking about the process as far as the mechanism of ascent of sap is concerned. Keneke hoy, we have to talk about different theories that are associated with it and some types of hypothesis also. So last class we have started with the first one, that is root pressure. So we will be continuing the root pressure theory again. So what we remember from the last classes, root pressure boli kole, the term was given by, we have already written all those, right? What is that? I mean, what is root pressure? When will root pressure occur, etc., etc.? And what is the drawback? Why is it not accepted? This is a portion that we have already done, right? So not accepted, the basic reason was because of its 2 atmospheric pressure, because of its magnitude. It's not accepted because it could not explain ascent of sap in case of tall trees, right? So up till there we have done. So continue from there itself. Points boli likhi palai likha. Coniferous plants, you have to understand the meaning. Coniferous, cone shaped plants black ki hoy gymnosperms, right? Coniferals bole to eta order e asile, right? Okay, so what is root pressure? The pressure that develops in the cortex of the root, and as a result the water is pushed upwards. That is what is called as root pressure. And what we remember from the last class is, when does root pressure occur? Root pressure ami ketia dekha pam plant edalot? Who remembers that? It is absorption is more than transpiration, right? If the absorption is more, obviously the water will exert a pressure in the cells, and that is what is called as root pressure. So out of these points, এইটো তো point আমি already discuss কৰিছো, root pressure is generally seen in case of herbaceous plants. This point is important. এইটোৰ ওপৰত question আহে. One example or the best example of root pressure in natural condition is guttation. As far as what is guttation is concerned, we will be writing it down. Guttation, if you remember, we have spoken few lines about it. What is guttation? Guttation is also loss of water, right? Transpiration is also loss of water, but we have to use two words, loss of pure water and loss of impure water. So the question that is asked is, which form of water is considered to be pure? Transpiration or due to water loss hoy, that is considered to be pure water, and the water that is lost because of guttation is considered as impure water. And the reason behind that is, transpiration ki hoy, it's the loss of water in the form of water vapor, right? It's only the water molecules that goes out. But if you are talking about guttation, it is the water will come out from the tip of the xylem, and together with that water the minerals would also be present, and so it is considered as ki impure water. So hetu question ahe, pure kuntu, impure kuntu, right? Hekhini ami likhi lo okman guttation or. So etyaloke 2 points to be remembered. First, in the form of water droplets, transpiration ki hoy in the form of water vapor. Yate ki hoy loss of water in the form of water droplets. Next is transpiration, pure water, guttation, impure water. Please write it down. Guttation occurs through, you have to know the word hydrothol, right? Transpiration occurs through stomata, right? And so this is called as water stomata. And question could be guttation is due to, or it occurs due to dash, it occurs due to root pressure. So these are the words that you need to remember, right? So guttation hole, apart from guttation, another thing that you need to study is something called as bleeding. So next example, लिखिएगा bleeding. So what is root pressure? We have discussed, right? Root pressure or the question I give two examples of root pressure. Two examples of root pressure is guttation and bleeding, right? Because guttation also occurs because of root pressure, bleeding also occurs because of root pressure, right? When will we use the word bleeding? When we are concerned with the injured part of a plant, right? So that's all about the first one, that is root pressure theory. Next we have to talk about the next one. If you remember in the last class, all the theories and hypotheses that we have proposed to explain ascent of sap has been broadly divided into two categories, that is physical theories and vital theories, right? So what we are discussing is the physical theories. The first one is root pressure, second likha imbibation theory. And I think you will remember, as we have said it in the last class, no? Out of all the theories, it is not very important that you will remember each and every word of these contents, right? So what you need to remember, we have already marked it down. Root pressure ki details of janibo laibo, and the next part maybe the question might be asked about the most accepted hypothesis, that is transpiration pool and adhesion cohesion theories, not a hypothesis, sorry. As far as these are concerned, who has proposed this? That's the only question that is asked. What is the drawback, or what is imbibation theory? Teneke questions iman commonly asked nohoy. Kintu propose kone korise ketiaba ahibo pare, but even then this is not so very important. Important ki root pressure and transpiration pool. Who has proposed and what does the theory talk about? Eblak iman important nohoy, ever reading koriba khali. So physical theories, we have to talk about 4 of them: root pressure, imbibation, capillary and transpiration pool, and adhesion cohesion. So talking about imbibation theory and capillary theory, obviously not accepted because they have certain types of drawbacks, right? Are the lines understood? Right? Imbibation theory, what did it say? According to the Unser or Sachs, mainly we give more importance to Sachs. So according to this theory, what he said is the walls of the xylem are responsible for ascent of sap. What he said, the walls of the xylem will absorb the water by which process? By the process of imbibation. Imbibation hobo lagile ki hobo lagbo? The walls should be dry at the first, and then they will start absorbing water, and they will exert a pressure, and ultimately that will go to the other parts of the plant body, right? So imbibation or karone ascent of sap hoise boli, it is he who has proposed it. But এটা বস্তু কি মোৰ গ্ৰাছ পাৰসন, he said imbibation is responsible for ascent of sap. Imbibation কোনে কৰিছে? Walls of the xylem vessels. So he said water moves through the walls of the xylem vessels and reaches the other parts of a plant. So, and if you are talking about the walls of a xylem vessel, or if you are talking about water passing through the walls and intercellular spaces, we have already discussed 2 concepts, that is apoplast and symplast. Right? So water moves from cell to cell, or it moves along the plant body through which pathway? Symplast or apoplast? It is always symplast, because at last we have seen, no, from endodermis itself, it is only the symplast method that is followed, right? What he said, apoplastic movement is responsible. What is the drawback? Actually, it is symplastic movement that is responsible and not apoplastic, and so this has been criticized and not accepted. Clear? Okay, next coming to this one, capillary theory proposed by Boehm. What he said that the vessels or the xylem vessels, if you know xylem boli kole, it consists of 4 cells. Similarly, phloem also consists of 4 cells, and all the 4 cells of xylem does not conduct water, right? Okol duta cell conduct kore, xylem vessels and xylem tracheids or tracheids, right? So if you are talking about a xylem vessel, how does a vessel look like? Something like a tube like structure, right? And if this is a tube, etu ki hobo? Pore. It's through this pore that the water will enter inside, right? So what he said is, he said because of capillary action, xylem takes in the water and it transports the water to the different parts of the plant. But if you remember, we have talked about capillary. When we were discussing about the types of soil water, we have said something called as the capillary water. Out of the different types of soil water, the plants absorb capillary water. And what exactly is a capillary? It is a small pore. A pore, if it has to be a capillary, it should have a very small dimension. Diameter to both horu hobo, it's less than 1, right? So he said it's because of capillary action that ascent of sap takes place. What is the drawback? The lumen of the xylem is too big to be a capillary. Lumen money, we are talking about this one, right? Horu holehe capillary hobo. Tar jodi pore to bahut dangor hoy, hitu capillary no hobo, right? So this is the drawback. And finally, we have the transpiration pool and adhesion cohesion theory. Heading kora transpiration pool, adhesion cohesion theory. The lumen of the xylem vessel is too big to act as a capillary. Lumen money, we are talking about the inside portion, no? Inside portion of a xylem vessel, it's something like a tube. So it's hollow, it's like a pore, right? Hey, pore jeri hoy eta diameter thakibo no? Hey, diameter to lumen, capillary boli ami kobo parim noarim. We cannot say that to be a capillary because it's big. যদি সৰু হলেতেন less than 1 millimeter হলেতেন তেতিয়াহলে তাক আমি কি বুলি কলোহেতেন capillary বুলি কলোহেতেন so that's the reason why it's not accepted Okay, I think this is over. Next we come to this one. Ascent of sap takes place because of, they said that it's because of transpiration pool and adhesion cohesion theory that ascent of sap takes place. Who proposes? Jolly and Dixon, you have to remember the name. As far as Jolly and Dixon, what they said is 3 factors are responsible. First, transpiration. Second, adhesion, and third, cohesion. Now first we need to understand what is the meaning of adhesion and cohesion. Adhesion is also sticking together, cohesion is also sticking together, but we have to use the words sticking of like things and sticking of unlike things, right? So what he said, je adult plant or ascent of sap hobo lagile tinta force thakibo lagibo. First the transpiration hobo lagibo, the water needs to go out and so they will develop a suction pressure and that will lead to the absorption of the water by the roots. Right. Second is suction pressure to baru hole root to jodi absorb koribo lage there should be a relation between the water molecules that will enter inside the xylem because it is not only one water molecule that enters inside the vessel, it's a mass of water molecule or it moves in a bulk flow since we are talking about translocation, right? Eta water molecule to nazai gutebilak water molecule ekeleke he vessel to thumai jay, right? Gutebilak water molecules jete humabo lagibo so eta water logot antu water eta relation by affinity thakibo lagibo na lage. If the water molecules does not stick together, then what will happen? Eta he jabo, right? Gute pani khini jodi vessel ot humabo lage tetiahale ki hobo lagibo water molecules majot sticking property to thakibo lagibo, right? If 2 water molecules stick to each other, that is something that is called as sticking of like particles. Ar tak ami ki boli kom cohesion kom ne adhesion kom? It is cohesion, right? It to confuse hoy jay no cohesion ne adhesion. Like things is always cohesion, unlike things is adhesion. So what he said, je adult goss tade ki hobo lagibo first to transpiration hobo lagibo, that is the reason why it will accept. So if you are talking about it as a xylem, no, xylem e ki koribo it will absorb root, etu root hobo pani lobo, so pani jete yat humabo. So if you are talking about it as a vessel, tetale tat ki hobo the water molecules will enter. So this water molecules will have a property cohesion and next transpiration buzi palu, cohesion buzi palu. Now what is left is adhesion. What he said is there should be a relation or a sticking property with the wall of the xylem and the water molecules. Tak ami ki boli kom? Adhesion. So for 3 words or 3 factors ascent of sap occurs: transpiration, adhesion between the water molecules and the walls of the xylem, and cohesion between the water molecules are responsible for ascent of sap, right? So ei tinta jehetu buzilu when we talk about transpiration, no, transpiration ot ki hoy je water gusi jay, water jodi gusi jay it develops a pressure and the water will enter. If you talk in terms of osmotic pressure and DPD, or maybe you talk in terms of water potential, what are the factors that you will see here after transpiration? Osmotic pressure ki hobo, water potential ki hobo, DPD ki hobo. Eta part of our transpiration hoi gol, transpiration hoi ja mane ki water loss hol, water loss hoar karone yate ki thakile solutes kini thakile, so solutes thakile osmotic pressure after transpiration would be ki high, right? If you talk about DPD, it will be low, and next if you are talking about water potential, again okay. Now this theory is supposed to be the best accepted, right? When is the theory accepted? When there are no drawbacks, right? Generally what they said is etu theory te ko drawback na aur hekarne it is well accepted, but in spite of that there was a scientist called as Strasburger. What he said is he tried to find out a drawback from this theory, right? What he was of the opinion, he said that if xylem is a vessel like structure and if water molecules enter inside the vessel, sometimes what happens is air bubbles might also enter along with water. And if all the air bubbles enter and it blocks the area, tetle water molecule aru epine pass koribo nwaribo. So he said what will happen then, because it's obvious that if water is absorbed, air molecules will jabo. We can consider the example of drinking something with the help of a straw, right? Liquid kiba eta jodi straw re khao, straw re khwa logele eta to eta shobdo hoy no, water bubbles bilak jai karne. So if all the bubbles enter in the same direction, sometimes what happen? The bubbles might block this one. So he asked what will happen then. Then what was the explanation? The explanation was, first, this type of an incident is not very common. It's not like this that all the bubbles will enter at the same time and then they will block the way. Eta bubbles jabo pare. If suppose we are talking about this one with the water molecules, eta bubble goleo. If suppose you have a bubble here, the water will move like this. If suppose if you have a bubble here, maybe the water will move like this. So it will make its way. First, it's something that's very uncommon. But in spite of that, if it occurs, then what happens is, it is not only one xylem vessel that is present in the plant. There are so many vessels together in a plant. Okol edale vessel na thake nohoy, okol edale pani nuthai tu. Jetia we are talking about that anatomy, it is not only one bundle that is present. There is a collection of bundles. So if you talk about that anatomy, yate dhora xylem ase. And we are talking about what? We are talking about root at present. And if you are talking about root, arrangement kenuka asile? Root or stem or anatomical difference? How will you identify? Eta root or TS or eta stem or TS dia ase. Microscope or tolot saisa. Kuntu root hoy, kuntu stem hoy, keneke gom paba? Exactly. Endark exarch is also okay. Endark exarch mainly is the difference between a root and a stem. Hetu thike ase. Kintu aru eta ki jane na? You can talk about arrangement of vascular bundles also. Conjoint aru radial. Right? Etu ete ami ki akisu? Conjoint kene? Conjoint mane to join hoi thaka. Xylem phloem duita ekeleke join hoi thakile he conjoint kom. Etu to xylem phloem belek belek ke ase no? Etu kami ki kom radial. Right? Aru jodi xylem phloem eneke thake no? Conjoint, and this is a characteristic of what? Stem, this is a characteristic of a root. So you can differentiate both of them by looking at the structure of the vascular bundle. Okay, coming to this point, if all this are xylem bila kenuka vessels we are talking about, because the absorption will be through the vessels. So if suppose etu dhora, this is a tube that got blocked because of the air bubbles, it might happen, right? If one tube gets blocked, there are several others that will do the function. Is the point understood? First, eneke bubbles ere ketia bondho kori nidie. Iman common condition nohoy. Ketia ba jodi hoy, te bubbles jodi bondho kori die, te edal vessel ki hoy jabo, block hoy jabo. Jodi block hoy jay, there are some other vessels that will do the work. And if suppose you say that all the vessels got blocked, jiman xylem asile, there might be a condition. Sometimes what happens is air bubbles ki korile protect the vessel of bondho kori dile. At that condition, will the plant absorb water? Are you understanding the question? Xylem vessels kiman thake? Bahut thake. Because xylems and phloem keeps on increasing. If you know something called as secondary growth of a plant, plant bilako secondary growth hoy nohoy. Especially dicots, monocots auto nohoy. Dicots are secondary growth hoy. When you talk about secondary growth, what do you understand? Increase in the number of tissues. Which tissues to be precise? Epidermis increase kore niki? Ne cortex increase kore? বুজি পাইছা নে এডাল গছ হকট হৈ যাব লাগিলে তাত কি হ'ব লাগিব সেলস বা টিস্যুজ ইনক্রিজ কৰিব লাগিব না লাগে তেতিয়াই হকট হৈ যাব সো টিস্যুজ ইনক্রিজ কৰে কোনবিলাক টিস্যুজ generally the credit goes to what okay secondary growth হ'ব লাগিলে where does secondary growth takes place in the dicots why not in monocots due to absence of cambium very good so if cambium is present then only the secondary growth will take place. What is cambium? A cell or a layer of cell, right? A cell will divide and form two cells during the process of cell division. Cambium will divide and form two cells. What are the two cells we are talking about? Cambium is responsible for secondary growth. Tar mane ki cambium to bhangi pelai duta cell form koribo. Hetu to increase no. So cambium bhangi pelai ba cambium divide kori pelai ki cell form kore? Oh, hetu one part hetu pisot. Secondary growth or karne who is responsible? Xylem and phloem. Right? If suppose we are talking about suppose etu a condition no, yate ki hobo? Edal vascular cambium develop koribo no kore. So this was called as who forms vascular cambium, we will discuss in the anatomy class. But we know there should be a ring of cambium and only then the secondary growth will take place, right. So this is suppose a vascular cambium. If you are talking about this as a vascular cambium, ki thakibo? Cells, right. Each and every cell would be called as what? The entire ring, vascular cambium. So a protective cell divide koribo nokore. Every cell will divide and ultimately the cells will increase and the secondary growth will take place. So cambium divide kori pelai ki form kore? Xylem and phloem, right. So it is the inner side ki form koribo newly formed xylem, outer side ki form koribo newly formed phloem. So what we are saying is, if suppose we are talking about this as a condition jot niki xylem bilak jiman xylem asile block hoi gol, thik ase, karon xylem jiman asile sob block. Just think of a condition that each and every vessel got blocked. The question is, during this situation, will a plant absorb water? Plant keneke absorb kore xylemor through e kitu gutei kita xylem block hoi goise. So plant absorb koribo paribo nware pani, or whether it's like this that the plant will die. Question to buji paisa bhalke, right? So xylem vessels bilak jodi so block hoi jay, at that situation will a plant still absorb water? Have you heard something called as lateral conduction of water? Lateral conduction of water. What is lateral? Sidewise conduction of water. We are talking about xylem, everything got blocked, then sidewise medullary rays, right. So what he said, the drawback was if the xylem gets blocked, water conduction no hobo boli koisile. But now we know even if all the xylems gets blocked, eto to hoboi nware, but in spite of that if it occurs, then the plant will still absorb water, and this process is called as ki lateral conduction. Kune koribo? Medullary rays bilake koribo. And who forms medullary rays we will be discussing in anatomy class, right. Newly formed medullary rays or secondary growth hote ami etu bostu discuss korim, right. As far as medullary rays are concerned, yate centermost portion to ki kobo jot niki ebilak parenchyma tissues thake no, etuk ami ki boli kom? Pith, right. Pithor in and round tat ki thakibo? Some star like or some row like cells, tak ami ki boli kom? Rays. Ki rays? Medullary rays. What they do? Lateral conduction of water. Clear? Okay. Transpiration pool, adhesion, cohesion. Okkoman likhim, besi nilikho. Root pressure, amoi jiman kita theory disu imbibation pressure ba tomar capillary theory, sorry, imbibation theory, capillary theory, iman bilak exactly heading kori pelai nai. Kintu eta duta word ase, capillary action boli eta word ase, imbibation boliu eta word ase, right? Ar plus root pressure boli ekdom heading kora nai, kintu sob bostu ase root pressure. Herbaceous plants ase, 2 magnitude ase, then guttation ase, sob ase. So instead of searching one line here and one line there, it's better you study the note itself, right? Pass aru beleg ekko na lage, we understand. Aru eta likhibo para. And transpiration pool in adhesion cohesion theory could talk about the ascent of sap up to almost 380 atmosphere. Herbaceous plants bilakor ki asile 2 atmosphere ami koisilo root pressure or magnitude kiman asile, it could explain only ascent of sap or a pressure up to 2 atmosphere. Kintu transpiration pool and adhesion cohesion theory could explain ascent of sap up to, mane in case of tall trees also, or atmospheric pressure kiman 380 atmosphere, right? Almost. So if we are talking about 380, then obviously we can talk about, or we can explain ascent of sap in case of tall trees also. So this is all about the physical theories. Next we have to talk about the vital theories. Vital theory boli heading koriba. দুটা আসলে ন রিলে পাম্প আৰু pulsation If you remember, such type of a diagram we have drawn during root pressure also. Yes, but there is a difference. Key difference? Compare kora duita. Root pressure diagram to or ER diagram to compare kora. Yes, this one. Right. So what did he say? J.C. Bose was of the opinion that ascent of sap occurs because of pulsation theory or pulsation theory. What did he say? He said that because of water absorption, water develops in the inner cortical cells and this pressure is responsible for upward rising of water. Root pressure ki asile all cortical cells, yate ki ase inner cortical cells. So what he is talking about is the symplastic movement. Right, root pressure directly symplast boli koi dia nai. So cortex boli koise, it could be symplast, it could be apoplast, proper mention kora nai. Kintu yate properly mention korise the water will enter, it will enter the inner part and ultimately because of what symplastic movement, the water will move to each and every cell. In one respect, this theory is supposed to be true. Karan pani kihere khumabo, symplastere khumabo, cortical cells or pressure hobo, because if you remember the pathway, no, ami ki akisilu, EC, EP sequence to juntu akisilu, no, pericycle, water ki hoy, kisuman water to enike directly humai, kisuman water ki asile, cells or ba, I mean intercellular spaces or cell wall di humai. So what he said is, he said that because of the pressure that exerts inside the cortical cells, mane because of symplastic movement, the water enters inside or it rises in a plant. Ascent of sap hoy. Ha. Symplastic or logot kiho kane related first to word to ase inner. Because eta cell or inner portion mane ki we are talking about the lumen. Bhitor cell eta duta part thake no, cell wall or portion to thake ar bhitor khini. Ha, bhitor khini kami ki boli kom lumen by inner. right? So hey inert jeta pressure hoise eta mane kuntu pressure, we are talking about the symplast, karon inert hobo lagile protoplasm ase tare jintu pressure take ami symplast boli noko jaru, living content of a cell, right? So living eta side sabole kole this explanation is correct because we know water always is carried through the symplastic pathway itself, right? So ekhini loke thike asile, kintu instead in spite of that it has a drawback. What is the drawback? So what he said je ascent of sap hobo lagile roots lagibo, roots ot cortical cells thakibo lagibo, tetia he ascent of sap hobo. But again the same explanation, ascent of sap could be seen even when the roots are removed or killed by the use of different chemicals or heat treatment. Yeah. Iate ki koisile cortex thakiboi lagibo tetia he ascent of sap hobo. Kintu now we know cortex nathakileo, root nathakileo ascent of sap hoy, right? He did not say it clearly. Mane ki janai, it is not like this that once someone has said the other person cannot say. It was a study time and so various scientists from time to time were trying to explain. So many of the scientists, they will have the same opinion, but the words would be different, right? Okay, that's a drawback. So when we are writing the point, we are writing many sentences, but in one line what we will understand, even if the root is removed, ascent of sap takes place, and that is a drawback. Who has proposed? Monot rakhiba. Baki details ekko kudha nai. Next is Godley-Wiskis relay pump theory. what he said that ascent of sap occurs because of a rhythmic change in osmotic pressure. So according to him, a change in osmotic pressure is responsible for ascent of sap. In one side, the explanation is correct. Because if a cell has more OP, tetiyahe pani lobo. Right. So what he said is because of OP, but he has used a word that is called as rhythmic. What is rhythmic? At a rhythmic movement, no? Ebar besi hobo, ebar kom hobo, akko besi hobo, akko kom hobo, right? This is what is called as rhythmic. So he said ascent of sap is because of change in OP in which cells? Specific duta cellor kotha kose in xylem parenchyma and medullary rays. So he said ascent of sap kiho karne hobo? Medullary rays aru xylem parenchyma OP ebar bahibo, ebar komibo. Jedi barhi jai, they will take in water. Jedi komi jai, they will give out water, and as a result, the water will move from cell to cell, and ascent of sap will take place. Just read the sentence if it's clear or not. This part to clear. Ekita to ami already koriso. OP high means what? Solute more. If the solute is more, obviously the water will enter. Right? Again, correct. But again, the drawback is even if these cells are removed, in spite of that, ascent of sap takes place. So, teo ki kosile root thakibo lagibo, rootot ei duta cell thakibo lagibo, tetiyahe ascent of sap hobo pare. Now we know even if these cells are removed from the root or the root itself is cut, in spite of that, ascent of sap hobo. So, the drawback is almost the same for all, right? Possession theory ki kose je actually sabole gole drawback nasile etu to correct e hobo lage simplastic movement or karne water ki hoy eta cell pra antu cell le jai aru hei karne ki hoy ascent of sap hoy. So this is what he has explained. Kintu what he said je ascent of sap hobo lagile eta pressure develop koribo lagibo. Pressure to ko develop koribo inner content of a cortex. So cortex thakilehe pressure hobo aru pressure holehe ascent of sap hobo. Cortex ko thakibo lagibo, root thakibo lagibo. Tamane according to him, the plant should have a root. In the root, it should have a cortex. Cortex or bhitorot pressure develop koribo, tapsot ascent of sap hobo. Kintu we have seen the root dal jodi kati diya to cortex na thakibo. Root katileo to ascent of sap hoy. Hekane drawback not accepted. Root pressure is almost the same. The drawback gutei almost the same. Even if the root is removed, ascent of sap takes place. Right? So we have completed the mechanism of ascent of sap. As far as we are talking about what? Absorption of water and minerals since transport in plants ko aso. So whenever we are talking about transport, we are concerned with two important things: transport of water and transport of food. Right? Talking about transport of water, Pune transport kore obviously it is xylem, and if you are talking about transport of food, it is the phloem. It is not important. I mean, it's not sufficient just to say it. We need to prove it also. Etia hai ame janu xylem e pani loy boli, but there was someone who has proved it. right? Now we know that phloem conducts food, but there was someone who has proved that before, right? So there are certain experiments which talks about xylem conducting water and phloem conducting food. If you are talking about xylem conducting water, the proof that was given was through an experiment. Jot niki edal plant ki korisil stain korisil, the staining experiment. I don't know, in your lower classes might be you all have done that. You take a twig, you take a stem, you put it in a colored water, and later what you will see is all the parts gradually starts becoming what? Red or whatever is the color of the liquid. Ki ho karone karon absorption hoise, absorption hoi pelai ki korise different parts bilakot pani khumaise, pani to jehetu colorful, parts bilaku colorful hoi goise. And if you put that stem in that liquid or in that colorful liquid and then you analyze the xylem part little later, you will see that it is only the xylem that gets stained with that color. So if xylem e akol color to loise, so we understand that the water coat through goise, xylem phloem is not getting stained. So that is one experiment that talks about xylem conducting water. What is the name of the experiment? Staining experiment. You don't have to read about all this. Etu ame general bostu horu class oto porhi ahisu, right? Next is as far as the stain is concerned, stain to GT hobo pare. You can use saffronin also. You can use aniline blue also. Pani khini he colorful koribo lage, right? You can use ink also, right? So ultimately, jedi okol xylem gets stained, we conclude that xylem conducts water. If you talk about phloem conducting food, we have something called as a ringing and gargling experiment. Etu ami olop derike korim. Let's complete the xylem part and then we'll go for the phloem. Simple, huh? Oh, xylem or polar end, heblak opan chemical explanation hobo. Eta molecular polar end kuntu. As of now, what you understand is attraction between the two xylem molecules, sorry, two water molecules. Adhesion hole hodai like particles attract hoy, sorry, ulta koi aso. Cohesion hole like hoy, aru yat hole tumar walls aru water molecules or hobo, right? Okay. So theories khini completed. Etya likha factors affecting water absorption. No, xylem wallor logote hob. Xylem wallor logote hob. Like o eta hobo aru unlike o eta hobo. Like hobo lagile duta water molecule hobo. Aru unlike hobo lagile water aru xylem cells or mazot hobo. So duita polar jedi log lage teta like hoi jabo no. Explanation to ma class xylem. Okay, next heading kora factors affecting water absorption. So if you are talking about factors affecting absorption, so absorption will depend on the amount of water that is present in the soil also, right? So jedi pani besi ke ase, then they will absorb more. Jedi water less condition or grow korise, then absorption would be less. It's something that's very normal, we understand. As far as point is concerned, moi yat likhi dia nai aru water besi thakile pani besi absorb koribo hebilak likha nai, it's well known. Under this heading, what you need to know is what is the type of water that the plants accept. It's the capillary water, and together with that we have something called as jihetu water absorption kopra hoy soilor pra. So we have one soil that is said to be physiologically dry soil, right? So you have to know the term. Kisuman soilok ami physiologically dry soil buli koy, and as the name suggests, dry soil mane ki hobo, obviously water kom hobo. And apart from that, one of the most important reason for calling a soil physiologically dry is less in oxygen content, right? Soil or water com, so that is called as physiologically dry soil. Water com means which water we are talking about? The available water that is present, or it's I mean for the plants. Gravitational water besi thakile hetu water hetu soil ok ami good soil ba dry soil teneke noko. Capillary water jodi kom thake tetial tak ami ki boli kom? Dry. Next, hey soil to jodi oxygen content kom thake, that soil would be considered as dry. So if you take an example of a particular area of soil where it has been waterlogged, pani hoy goise, flood hoy goise. So flood hoy goise means what? Pani besi ase. So pani besi ase mane, does that mean the plant will start absorbing more water? Teneka to nohoy. Waterlogged soil is always an example of physiological dry soil. Kiho karone? The main reason is oxygen na thakibo, right? So hey question keneke ahe, identify the physiological dry soil. Tatke besi details aru nahe, ase. So physiologically dry soil hobo lagile, first condition ami ki palu? Lack of oxygen, right? Second condition could be sometimes salt concentration besi thakibo pare. Saline soil is an example of physiological dry soil, right? Okay, etu likha. So these are the 2 points that you remember. Physiological dry soil eta example lagibo, waterlogged soil important. Waterlogged mane pani ho gole, बहुत बेसी पानी हो गल, राइट? आमी फर्स्ट की কৈছো যে যদি পানি বেশি থাকে প্ল্যান্টসে পানি বেশি লব, দ্যাট ডাজ নট মিন যে বানপানী হৈ গৈছে আৰু পানী বহুত এবজর্ব কৰিব, ৰাইট? কোল্ড সয়েলৰ টেম্পাৰেচাৰটো কম কাৰণে এবজৰ্পশ্যনটো ফাষ্ট নহয় ঠিক আছে সেইকাৰণে যেহেতু এবজৰ্পশ্যন ফাষ্ট নহয় তেতিয়াহ'লে তাত কি হ'ব যে ইট উইল বি কনচিডাৰ্ড এজ এ ড্ৰাই সইল ইটসেল্ফ So some of the factors এইখিনি পাৰ্টৰ পৰা কি কোৱেশ্চন আহিছে অকল ফিজিঅলজিক্যাল ড্ৰাই সয়েলৰ এক্সাম্পলছ খিনি মনত ৰাখিম আৰু বাকি একো তেনেকৈ কোৱেশ্চন আহা নাই right so we are talking about absorption of water and with absorption of water since transpiration is very much related so the next topic that we have to study is transpiration right types of transpiration ketia besi hobo we have to talk about the stomata the structure of the stomata etc so next heading koriba transpiration এইখিনি লিখি লোৱা poorly aerated soil যত অক্সিজেন কম থাকে তাক আমি poorly aerated বুলি কম soil air কম থাকিব oxygen যদি কম থাকে that soil is an example of a physiological dry soil so dry soil কেতিয়া কম যেতিয়া তাত অক্সিজেন কম থাকিব area soil লিখিছা aerated slow যাব এটো হলেও তোমাৰ ড্ৰাই হ'ব কাৰণ পানীটো ইনাফ লব পাৰা নাই ন হল over okay next we have to talk about transpiration what is transpiration some of the points we already know so we are not going to write the definition obviously right transpiration loss of water in the form of water vapor by the aerial parts of a plant body is called as transpiration right now the question is why does a plant transpire plant adale transpire kyo kore excess water karone hetu to hoy it wants to get rid of the excess water kintu one of the most important function is to bring a cooling effect to the plant right it needs to cool down so cool down kune koribo transpiration e korabo right so significance of transpiration bahut ase tar bitor eta ki hol excess water will be writing it down transpiration or logot duta statement ase ekita hol niki okay transpiration process to plant edaler karone useful ne harmful harmful or useful so jeneke we use a term called as a necessary evil transpiration is a necessary evil so question to ebar ahisile who has given the statement right hey two question ahiso so we'll write the statements first kuntu yearot I don't remember kuntu year egita upor I had Curtis of question I don't know I don't remember the year jihetu ahise we should not be taking any risk right আগৰ দিনত আহিছে আগৰ দিনৰ কোৱেশ্চন এটা ৰিপিট কৰিলে প্ৰেজেন্ট দিনৰ প্ৰবলেম হৈ যাব কি আহিব পাৰে কিয় নাহে ৰিপিটেড কোৱেশ্চন অবভিয়াছলি আহে হা কোৱা প্লিজ ক্লিয়াৰ ইয়াৰ ডাউটছ তেনেকৈ কি আই ডিডণ্ট গেট নাই কোৱা কি হ'ল কোনটো
মানে কয় যে আপুনি যে এইখিনি পৰা কোৱেশ্চন আহিছে সো এইখিনি ইম্পৰ্টেন্ট যিখিনি আহিছে সেইখিনি তো নাই মানে
মই যোনখিনি ইম্পৰ্টেন্ট কৈছে তুমি একে নপঢ়িবাই you will be just taking the negative meaning of importance
নহয় আহিছে বুলি যিখিনি কয়
সেইখিনি আৰু নাহে
ট্ৰান্সপিৰেশন কোনে মানে ওয়ার্ডটো কোনে দিছিল এইটো তো না
ট্ৰান্সপিৰেশন ওয়ার্ডটো কোনে দিছিল নাহে কিন্তু এই দুটা স্টেটমেন্ট আহিব পাৰে why don't you go and set the paper ঠিক আছে if I say it's important does that mean যে আৰু মই নপঢ়ো
কনসেপ্ট লাগিব কনসেপ্টৰ ওপৰত
একেটা কোৱেশ্চন ৰিপিট কৰি দিলে কি কৰিবা oh my god you are taking a different meaning of the word important my important কিয় কৈছো so that you study আৰু তুমি কি কৰিছা important কাৰণে you don't study
এক্সেলেন্ট টোপনি লাগিছিল ইয়াৰ টোপনিটো
please okay so মই যিখিনি পইণ্টছ দিছো নহয় whatever I mark ইমান বছৰ I am into this line ইমান বছৰ হৈ গ'ল মোৰ more than 12 years so obviously I am not giving ekdam unwanted things to obviously I am not giving you don't have time neither I have time right no মই বুজি পাইছো কিন্তু যোনটো ইম্পৰ্টেন্স দিছো you have to accept that that's important if you don't accept that's your problem হয় না so important to নপঢ়ি পেলাই আছে কব ম্যাম পেপার was very tough okay anyway okay transpiration is such a easy part no janu you know transpiration so transpiration related ketaba etu question o ahise transpiration is maximum seen in which plants transpiration is totally absent in which plants or minimum in which plants right so com code hobo xerophyte succulent xerophyte is the word okay maximum হ্যাঁ
যেটো মানে বেশি থাকে
হাইড্রোফাইটত কেনেকৈ ট্ৰান্সপিৰেশ্যন হ'ব বাৰু actually hydrophytes বুলি নকয় পেলাই একদম কাৰণ সব hydrophytes নহয় submerged hydrophytes are transpiration কিয় নহয় because the stomata is under water itself exchange of gas কেনেকৈ হ'ব right talking about transpiration as far as types of transpiration in a broader sense is concerned, we are concerned with two words. Either it would be a foliar transpiration or it would be a choline transpiration. Foliar transpiration, it's a transpiration through the leaves, and obviously the stomatas are related with that. Our choline transpiration is by stem. You have to remember this word. Choline mane ki? Choline is related with stem, right? Stem of our transpiration process is called as choline. As far as detailed description is concerned, types of transpiration. Types of transpiration could be of 4 types. It could be lenticular, cuticular, bark and stomatal. Out of the 4 things that we have said, which one is the most commonly seen? Obviously stomatal transpiration, right? Maximum transpiration it's always through the stomata. So that type of a transpiration will be called as stomatal, right? But not always the entire transpiration. It's not like this that it occurs only through the stomata. Sometimes certain amount of water is lost with the help of lenticels also, right? That type of a transpiration is called as lenticular. So what we need to remember, maximum water loss stomata re. Apart from that, some other parts, lenticle, cuticle and bark. What is bark? If you have a knowledge about anatomy, then we know what a bark is, right? Bark mane, okay, what is a bark? Bark of a tree boli kole ki buzo? Outer portion mane? In terms of tissues. Okol epidermal. Hetu bostu ki hobo jana jodi anatomy to porhisa tetihale bostu to monot ase etia maybe at this time you might forget, but the concept about bark is old view and new view. Old view et ki koisile bark consists of only dead tissues. New view ki koi living tissues plus some amount of living tissues together with the dead tissues forms the bark. So what exactly? Starting from ki jana, heard these words called as peribulum, periderm, phloem. Secondary growth on. So hebilak words, secondary cortex onwards, gutekhini ami ki boli kom bark, right? Agote ki koisile okol he cork cells khini bark asile, dead cells, no? Cork cells are considered as dead cells. So okol hetuk bark koisile, kintu etia ki kom secondary cortex onwards. Anatomy ta ami properly porhim. So it is some cells of the bark also lose water because of transpiration, that is called as bark. Out of 4 common keys, so both are commonly seen key stomatal. We have to compare between 4 of them. Little comparison. Obviously, details stomatal transpiration details of koribo. Whenever we talk about stomatal transpiration, we don't know just the stomata has an opening and closing mechanism. Stomata to onboard khuli na thake, jetia khulibo tetia transpiration hobo, when it is closed transpiration no hoy. So stomata will have an opening and closing mechanism, but if you are talking about lenticels, if you are talking about cuticular transpiration, or if you are talking about bark transpiration, tahator kunu closing and opening mechanism na thake, and that is the result why transpiration like these cuticular hawk, lenticular hawk, bark hawk throughout the day and night it keeps on occurring. The stomatal transpiration ketia only during the daytime. Lenticular transpiration opening closing mechanism absent, so transpiration ketia hobo dinoto hobo rati hobo hoday hoy thakibo, right? Stomatal transpiration okol dinot whenever the stomata is open. If you are talking about different types of stomata tetihale beleg, scotoactive stomata exception we have read, but in general stomata opens during the daytime, so transpiration ketia hobo during the daytime, ar rati ki hobo bondo hoy thakibo, so transpiration no hoy, right? Lenticular transpiration, or I think the time is over, no? So what we can do is we can take this part in the next class, huh? Cooling effect and mineral absorption. A plant transpires to bring a cooling effect to the plant. Nize to cool hobo laibo no. Kiba eta to mechanism thakebo jetia pani jabo cells or bhitore, so obviously the water will give a cooling effect to the cell. Protective cell ki hobo cool hobo. Heat loss jiman bor hoy because of the different reactions that are occurring inside the cell. Heat produce hoy ne nohoy. Hoy eta cell to bahut reactions hoy. Ta karone heat produce hoy. Right? A heat tuk to kunubai cool down koribo lagibo no. So water absorption jetia hobo, tetale it will bring a cooling effect. Ulai jabole absorb koribo na lagibo niki? Plant dalot water থাকিলেহে transpiration hobo onyo, so transpiration hobo lagilehe prothomte absorb koribo লাগিব, so pani to humabo tar pisothe ulabo, so ei humaute ki hol plant dalok cool kori dile ya karon pani to kiyo karone humaise পানী সোমালে কুল হৈছে কিন্তু পানীটো কিয় সোমাইছে হেতুটো চাব লাগিব water absorption we have read something called as active and passive it is because of the activity of the root itself or it is because of an external feature that occurs in a plant if it is because of the root itself tetale tak ami ki boli kom active it is because of a factor operating in the upper part of the plant body tamane jedi transpiration or karone water absorption hoise tak ami ki boli kom passive most common type ki it's always passive absorption that's more as compared to active absorption right so pani lole paniye ki korile cooling pani kyo lole transpiration or karone lole so transpiration is responsible for bringing the cooling effect of a plant as far as the second is concerned mineral absorption obviously the same explanation pani logot ki ahibo minerals o ahibo right I think that's all for today we'll continue this in the next class thank you